Building amazing experiences that engage and delight your customers is easy with Commio. Our smart, reliable voice and messaging solutions are easy to implement and scale with you so you can deliver more calls and texts, be more competitive, and save money. With Commio, you get peace of mind and happier customers. Find out why thousands of software platforms and enterprises trust Commio with their communications. Get a demo today.
Hey everyone, I'm Jonathan with Ricochet 360. We're here in LeadsCon in Vegas. Really excited about the show and sharing everyone our solution to spam, which is called Spam Guru. That's been a huge topic all throughout. Everyone's saying, how come my contact rates are so low? So if you don't have the opportunity, visit us online at ricochet360.com and schedule a demo. We look forward to talking with you guys. Something I really want to add is, if you have any questions about a lot of the confusion that's coming up with the SMS registration, there's a lot of legal things going on. You couldn't ask for a better resource than Commio. I'd suggest getting with them. They've been really helpful for us, and you'd be in really good hands.
I'm Penny Lee with What If Media Group. We are here at LeadsCon, wrapping up our last day. We learned a lot in the industry. We are focusing on FCC, TCPA, a lot of changes coming down tomorrow. We'll see what happens. But we're here, we have our compliant leads. That's all done in partnership with our friends at Commio. So reach out to them.
Hey, Scott Navratil here with Commio at LeadsCon 2023. It's been a great show, and just a couple highlights from me personally. We're present on a panel talking about compliance and growing your business, as well as adhering to compliance and how do they coexist.
Over the past 5 years, or maybe over the past 3 years, certainly with the change of the administration, there have been significant changes in the regulatory landscape. One example would be the proliferation of the data privacy laws, the proliferation of the mini TCPAs. So we had a great win 3 years ago in the Facebook case that changed the definition of an automatic telephone dialing system, which really reduced the risk of TCPA litigation at the federal level, and it was really quickly replaced with state laws. And so the risk level has not changed at all, because you may not violate the federal regulations, you may be violating state laws. The FCC comments and notice of proposed rulemaking on what is an appropriate consent and how that consent may be used for your contacts to consumers, and they want to limit it to one customer, one consent. Game-changing for our landscape. I had a conversation with somebody at our pool party here. That individual runs a call center, getting into lead buying, completely compliance-minded. Had a great conversation with him, and then I turned and I spoke to somebody else, and he said, I call, I text, I don't have consent, and I don't care. And I do it because I make money. And you know what? If you were to ask me, if I don't have a compliance program, I've never been burned, why do I have to invest in it? Well, for us and for this panel, the answer is you'll get burned one day. There's no question. The other is it's just not a sustainable business model. And so if we think about what we want to accomplish and conveying to you today, which is compliance can help you grow your business, and it doesn't have to impede it, that's where we sort of want to be thinking about that. You will get burned. If your business, if you continue to do that business model of just ignoring it, at some point, it will catch up to you.
Scott, since you started really on the know your customer front, I'm going to start with you on that. Ongoing due diligence. I've verified my customer, I've signed them, and now they're using your technology, they're sending messages. what is your obligation, and how do you effectively monitor them and make sure that they're not becoming or secretly a bad actor?
Yeah, like Terry said, I mean, the big part of that is audits. You know, we monitor and we sample traffic daily, just to make sure our customers are in compliance. And some companies that actually have very strong compliance programs are also having customers that are triggering tracebacks. We're getting subpoenas on their customers. We're getting carrier RCA. So I think the big thing that I would say is knowing your customers, number one. Keep those people off your network, right? Have very low tolerance for people who are going to put you in a bad situation. Like I said, you let someone on your network that's going to cause problems. You get flagged, you're going to be, it could be 350,000, right, or whatever that is. And we've had customers who had to go that route. So the best policy is to find a way to avoid that. The next part would be to make sure that your audits and your process are very clean. Make sure that the people in your organization, or whoever's writing the content, whoever who are generating those campaigns, making sure that the people within the organization, down staff, are thoroughly trained in compliance. So a lot of the large companies that we accept traffic for, their executive team, they're here at the show. They're coming to these sessions. They're very educated in compliance and what they need to do. But the ones who are actually writing the content are the ones that are actually, they're not compliant. They don't know the rules. They don't know what they can say and cannot say. And, and they're, in many cases, it's usually just sloppiness that's causing problems that are actually getting the traffic or the calls flagged. So it was a great panel, and a couple takeaways which are really important for our customers or anybody in the space is to make sure you deeply vet your customers. Know who you're onboarding to the network. Know who's going to be running traffic across your platform. Spare no expense of making sure that everybody that you're talking to, all new customers, even existing customers, are meeting the minimum criteria for compliance. Do audits on a regular basis. One of the takeaways that I got, which was pretty, kind of an epiphany, was making sure that your customers that you're onboarding have enough money. They have insurance in case there's litigation and they need to indemnify you. Can they afford to cover your legal costs if they get you into trouble, right? So things like that. I don't think a lot of people are thinking about it. Making sure that people who are writing your content, they're also knowledgeable and they're well trained in compliance. One of the things that we see on a regular basis when we get inquiries, tracebacks, RCAs from the mobile carriers, they're looking for why content was why was it sent, and one of the things that we see is a lot of sloppiness. People are still they have the old bad habits of snowshoeing. And so they're still using, bit.ly shortened URLs. They're using alphanumerics to replace letters in their domains. Misspelled words. I mean, basically, at this point in the game, if it looks like spam and smells like spam, it's spam. And so those are real important things to make sure that you're auditing that, making sure you have processes in place to proof the content that's going out on your network that's representing your brand. There's a whole lot more, and so if you're interested in getting the full list, we do have a checklist that you can download on our website. It has everything that you need to know. At least it's a good start to making sure that you're going to be compliant and that you're not going to find yourself in trouble with the carriers or worse, regulators.
So no sooner did the wheels of our plane touch down after LeadsCon than we got an email from the FCC containing all the rules focused on scam texting for the very first time. And on top of that, the same day, the carriers started to socialize timing for when all messaging traffic should be registered, meaning that the days of sending unregistered SMS or MMS without being charged the much higher unregistered traffic fees are now almost upon us. And these are two really big loopholes that every LeadsCon attendee needs to know about being closed very, very soon. But let's start with the real smell of rubber that's meeting the road today from the FCC. That's why I'm so excited to bring back Alan Quayle, a well-known expert in cloud communications who runs the TAD Summits as well as the TADHacks. And Alan, I think you got something coming up here next week, right?
That's right.
To give your input. Yeah, welcome in.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, welcome in. So I wanted to say too, I found this really interesting, Alan, that last year, Americans received 225 billion robotexts. And that's 157% year-over-year increase. So it feels like, I don't know if you agree, Alan, that we now live in a world of less robocalls and more robotexts. What do you think about that? Sound about right?
Well, I think we can get into the meat of it. I'd say yes by numbers, but we have to look at the customer experience on this as well.
We do. And so what I was alluding to earlier was, we just were at LeadsCon in Vegas, and on the last day of the show, we received two very interesting emails. The first one was from the FCC alerting us to some new proposed regulations and some rule changes that are going to go into effect. So these are going to require the carriers themselves to block certain robo-text messages and block texts from what they call illegitimate numbers. So I guess what they mean by this is that they're going to ask carriers to block texts that are originating from invalid, unallocated, or unused numbers. So my question to you is, what does this mean for businesses that are providing text messaging services? What will they have to do to comply with these new changes?
Yep, absolutely. So basically, they're going to need to monitor all their text messages for, as you said, for those invalid, unallocated, unused numbers, numbers not assigned to a text-capable number. And of course, that is self-identified. So, it's complex. I mean, you've got this patchwork quilt of databases you're going to have to dip into. I mean, some like, FCC runs the reassigned numbers database, so that's an easy one. But that self-identified numbers, that's a little worrisome because a lot of businesses have phone numbers that are text capable and they don't know about that. So it's going to be a real patchwork quilt. Never mind the more open requirements around a point of contact for the senders, the do not call registry issues, and almost and it's not written that clearly, but it's like anything that looks like spam, you should be blocking it. But let's just take a step back because let's look at the bigger sort of picture here. This has been rumbling along for 3 years now. I've written about it on my weblog. It's quite political. Now, I'm surprised the FCC didn't take a broader perspective and look at what's happening in terms of illegal robotexting from the American public's perspective. It's very much an industry perspective here because as an individual, I use basically Google Messages. It has spam protection. For me personally, spam texts are not a problem. It's like Gmail. Sometimes one will get through maybe once a month, but most of the time I have this folder that says spam and blocked texts, and it's full of stuff that I don't care about, so it's captured. However, for me, robocalling remains the more significant issue because the user experience is very different. When you get a text, you get all these alerts, notifications, reminders, there's tons of stuff. It's like it pops up and you ignore it. When you get a call, you look over. Even if you have your phone on silent, it's an interruption to your day, to your thought process. So, we need to look at the experience. They're treating the two as the same, and they're not the same in terms of user experience. So, and let's face it, these sources of illegal robo texts, I mean, you've got the peer-to-peer source, so it's, SIM boxes or stuff connected to the carrier. You've got, of course, the A2P source. So, we've got here in North America, 5 direct connected aggregators: Cineverse, Cinch, Calera, Vibes, Infobip. And, you look at it, well, you've got the carriers that are letting this in. You've got those A2P direct connect that are letting it in. Shouldn't all those guys be implementing basic network hygiene? But of course, politics. You've got the CTIA, the carriers' lawyers, all complaining about how difficult everything is while making loads of money. And bear in mind that those guys are seeing massive, billions of transactions coming through. They most probably, and of course they've got the templates for all the old illegal robo-texts. They most probably know when a campaign kicks up on their network within minutes. Yet everybody has to suffer with additional workload. So the bottom line is you're going to have to stop those texts that are most probably illegal. Your definition is as good as mine there. And this ruling that's come out can't be ignored, even though I say it's potentially overreaching what the FCC should be doing here. Yeah,
makes sense. And, sort of the next thing on the list from the FCC was, they cited, there's so many scam student loans, Social Security, and Medicare texts these days.
Yep.
They also say that it includes blocking numbers that these real agencies self-identify as they're not using them for texting. So it requires providers and aggregator partners to establish a point of contact for senders, which is interesting to me because you're right. I think they've got it flipped around, which is this is a point of contact that senders can use to inquire about their blocked texts. So that is those who are sending the texts can report erroneously blocked messages to kind of balance the need of the industry with consumers. Interesting. So, but I think what's important, Alan, what I wanted to bring you on is for the LeadsCon attendees we just talked to last week, and you already mentioned it, that everyone should know that the FCC is working on clarifying that the do not call registry should also be the do not text registry. So they want to extend the protections that prohibit marketing calls from being made to those numbers also apply to text messaging. So my question to you, Alan, is do you feel like today should all forward-thinking companies like Commio, like any provider who are connecting to those 5 connection points you mentioned, should we start applying the do not call registry to text campaigns like right now?
Yes. I would say for what good it does.
Right.
Remember, customers signed up for do not call, not necessarily do not text.
Yeah.
So they may be on that database, but you might have an existing business relationship. So get those opt-ins confirmed, get them up to date. I mean, we were talking earlier, I was just sharing experience for one brand I know. Now, it's in Europe, it's not North America, but they had a new CMO come in. They had a number of acquisitions. And when the CMO was doing an audit, they sort of went, oh my, they realized a lot of their opt-ins were, shall we say, in a bit of a mess. So they had to implement a program to reaffirm opt-ins, and they did more than that though. They basically, whenever they had a touch point with a client, they would, ask their preference in terms of being contacted, call, text, email, WhatsApp. Especially in other countries, WhatsApp is way more used than text.
Right.
And this one had a big impact. They asked the customer if they would, because delivery, everybody understands delivery of messages is a problem. Would they add onto their address book their email and phone number? And they did some A/B testing. And you know how it is. There's lies, damned lies, and statistics. But they saw for those that added in their contact information to the customer's address book, they were seeing like 3 times the response rates. So they actually used that to justify the budget for a compliance person and all the training that comes with it, because everybody that touches a customer needs to be trained in how to be compliant with customer communications. So absolutely, you've got to do it. You've got no way around it. I would say it's not exactly the right database to be using, but you have to follow what the FCC is putting in place. Otherwise, you find yourself outside of the party.
Yeah, for sure. Another interesting point, Alan, that they mentioned is that, and they even use these words, which I found really interesting, again, as the wheels of the plane were landing from LeadsCon. They said, the FCC is working on closing the lead generator loophole. They literally said that. And they said this has allowed companies to use a single customer consent to deliver robocalls and robotexts from multiple downstream marketers on subjects that they may not be what the consumer originally had in mind, which we did hear at the show that there were some folks who were asking for consent for each campaign, which is what I think everybody wants to be doing or what they're being told to do. Other people get consent once, they resell the lead or whatever, and they just continually point back to that original consent, and they're not getting it for each campaign. So, so would you agree that companies who are sending text should start obtaining first-party opt-in for each campaign?
Well,
which is a lot.
Depends. Yeah, that's a lot, and it depends how you define campaign. I, as a consumer, have a relationship with a brand. As part of that relationship, I say it's okay to contact me, or and there's sometimes there's levels in terms of if it's related to a transaction we've got going on, contact me. If it's marketing information from you, yes. If it's from third parties, no. So that's why you must never click that third party, just with the brand you're working with. So I think there is a need, as I mentioned before, to make sure you're on top of this, because some businesses just take the risk. They go, I get numbers from anywhere. I basically run campaigns as I see fit. And you know what? They're spammers and they're getting away with it and they're making good money. But the walls are slowly closing in. And this is one step of many more that we're going to see. We only need to look at what's happening in Europe, in Asia, around the push around compliance. So I'd say, the risk is only getting greater. And even if your intention is to be compliant, mistakes happen. And you could find yourself in receipt of a carrier RCA, root cause analysis. That is a slap on the wrist in terms of what are you sending through? That's why training is critical. Having somebody that in that organization is responsible for compliance across the organization, and having partners like Commio that can help you to avoid either getting into them, or if it do get into them, and it happens, we all make mistakes, they can get you out as fast as possible, because this is impacting your business operations.
Yep. I was going to say, you heard it earlier in the video, that as long as folks like Commio and our partners, we know our customer, they know their customer, we know our customer, they're dotting their I's, crossing their T's, doing all the right things. It doesn't mean they're not going to get legal notification or be flagged occasionally. You just got to be ready with the data to show that, nope, we were doing the right things. Thank you for checking. And then you move on. And believe me, because it happens almost every day. It's just part of doing business.
Exactly.
We got a notification from the FCC, and then the carriers and the DCAs you mentioned earlier contacted us the same day, which was not related, but ironic. So they said, look, we're going to start giving you guys some near-term direction, not specifically a date, but in the next few weeks/months. We don't have a hard date yet for when they want us to make sure that all of our traffic that we're passing to them is registered. And I guess the early ask was that, hey, you got to get at least 50% of your traffic, Commio, registered and sent to us by a date coming up. So we're actually reaching out to our customers, and thank goodness most of them are already in compliance, but those that are still sending unregistered, you basically have weeks now, not months. You have weeks to register your stuff. So Alan, my question to you is, does this mean that they'll stop taking unregistered traffic, or that they'll just start charging, which they've said they were going to do for a long time, that they're going to start charging a larger price for unregistered traffic? And I think the answer is they're going to start charging for unregistered, right?
Exactly. Well, we're talking about carriers here. And they will happily charge you more for the same service. So, this is going to, you will find the bill increases, but understand that this is a politically charged situation. So when politics gets involved, stupidity is guaranteed. So you are going to see some blocking as well, unfortunately. It's not just going to be bigger bills. You're going to see, a campaign that was running, you've got a higher charge, and then all of a sudden it's blocked. And it's like, what's going on here? The bottom line is, and it's what you said before, Tim, it's you've got to know your customer and be in compliance with the stated published policy that's backed up with the training across the organization. It makes sense in terms of response rates. I gave you that example from Europe, and for customers' experiences, because you're delivering something that's better for them. They know it's a particular business that they have a relationship with that's calling them. I get lots of calls coming through, and because of robocalling, I ignore them. You have to leave a voice message. And I've had some businesses call me, even though we have a relationship, and they didn't leave a message. So I don't call back, because I don't want to confirm it's a valid number. And that can go on for a week or more, until basically they give up and they send you either something through snail mail, or they do this, because some businesses are very voice centric, and they actually send you a text, and then you see the text and it's like, oh, it's Sam, damn. Because we don't add numbers or emails to our address list all the time, but that's why asking your customer to do that means you have a closer established relationship. They know those emails. It's not in the marketing folder, it's in your primary folder if it's Gmail, or it comes straight through into your primary text account, not into the spam or blocked folder within your messages. I know I'm being Android centric here, but Apple does the same thing, but many people don't activate it. And if you activate it, life is a lot better.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. And in fact, it's funny you mentioned when do you reply? I'll say for me, if I get a phone call that I don't recognize, I wait for them to leave a message. I wait for it to be transcribed, and then I'll read the transcription, and it'll be like, oh, it's my doctor trying to reach me, or it's,
Yeah.
Oh wait, I forgot I had that appointment. So there's
Yeah.
so many tricks that we have to use today, Alan, to just stay connected with each other.
That's it. Or it's your orthodontist, so your child's orthodontist. They got the main number, but it's the actual orthodontist that's calling you. And of course you don't have their number in, and you miss it. And then, it's like you miss the appointment schedule and all the rest. So absolutely.
Exactly.
It's being able to have those options in there improves the customer relationship. And I strongly recommend for any business, if you have or you have an established over a period of time relationship with, it's not transactional, it's something where they will be your customer for months to years, get them into the address book so that they know it's you that's calling.
Yeah, I love that idea of doing an audit and teaching them how to take those steps to add them to the phone and all of the above. I think that's so data hygiene is not fun, but it's so necessary.
And it's on all of us to do.
Yeah, it is. It is. Well, Alan, hey, thanks for your time. And I want to say too, next we're going to open it up and to your questions here with Scott Navratil. You saw him earlier in the video. But before we do that, I wanted to show you guys some really interesting views of our customer event back at LeadsCon. We had the chance to fly in a couple helicopters over the iconic Las Vegas Strip. So enjoy those views. And thanks to all the Commio customers who made it. And we look forward to working with you in 2023 and the years beyond. Thanks a lot, everybody. How are you?
Doing good, yeah. Incredible views. Yeah, what a incredible show that was last week. So happy to be here.
That was a lot of fun. It was quite an interesting group of folks we had. We flew over the strip. It was a lot of fun. I think you and I both agree it was great to be back out among customers and prospects post COVID, and that show has really seen some incredible growth. And again, the irony that these two messages would come down on the last day of the show is not lost on us. But I wanted to, just wanted to get your input on sort of the top 3 takeaways, and then we'll open it up for anybody who has questions. But first, Scott, you mentioned it earlier on in the piece that, if I'm a company that's using texting in any way today, should I register my numbers, brands, and campaigns as part of my normal business practices starting today? And if I don't, what's going to happen?
It's a great question. All of these changes, it seems like they did kind of come to a point in the last week. And, the 10 DLC and the registration and the carriers requiring, registered vetted traffic. We thought that this was going to happen. At least I did back in, I think October 21. In fact, it might have been, I think, when Verizon first announced the 10 DLC program. That might have been, I can't remember if that was 2020, maybe February 2020. And so it seems like to me that they've always moved the goalpost, right? Like, oh, this is the date. Everything's got to be registered. And then, okay, we're going to push that back and we're going to push it back. I feel like this is real this time. I think like we are the closest we've ever been to the carriers. And now I think with the notices that came out from the FCC really kind of driving the carriers to just finally push them over that line and say, okay, we're not going to take anything unverified anymore. So the reason you should start focusing on this now is that, you don't want to reach a point where, they say, hey, it's going to be, May 1st, everything has to be registered. And then, here you are on the 20th or the 29th, just trying to figure out how the program works, just trying to figure out how you go into the campaign registry, register your brands. Like, start now. You're going to have questions. You're going to probably submit stuff that may get rejected. You're going to want to find out why that's getting rejected. You're going to want to reach out to Commio for some guidance on, okay, I submitted a campaign and it hasn't been approved. And, it's been 2 days. How come? Or I submitted a campaign that got rejected. Why? So we've got a lot of, to your credit, right? You help us put together a lot of information and documentation on our website that kind of walks through the process. We have videos on the campaign registry process. What's the difference between registering a brand and a campaign and so forth.
Yeah.
But I think the key is, to answer your question, is to start now, because in the next 2 weeks, you got to make sure that you have the processes down so you can at least get, on a path to getting everything registered.
Yeah. And you'd agree too that, again, they're not going to be blocking traffic after those 2 weeks, but they will start charging more for the unregistered traffic, right?
Yeah, they're going to start charging more. In fact, I think the AT&T notice that went out, they're going to double the surcharge. I think it went up to 1 cent per text and 1.5 cents per MMS.
Yeah.
However, the other thing that I think was highlighted in the video is, even though that we have directions saying, hey, you have to hit certain metrics of registration by the state.
Yep.
Even though you have companies like AT&T say, all right, we're still going to accept unverified traffic, but we're going to really increase the surcharges on that. What we're seeing is that there is a large portion of traffic that now is registered. And so now the carriers have the ability to turn their attention to the unregistered traffic. Mm-hmm. So we've seen more in the last 3 months, inquiries, audits, and complaints, RCAs on traffic that, especially the unregistered traffic. So I think that, the more you try to run everything unregistered, right, I think you're going to have a higher likelihood of having the carriers actually audit that and have human beings in the fraud departments actually review your traffic, go to your websites, call your phone numbers that you're running in that traffic to see if it's legit. And if it looks like spam and smells like spam, then you could expect some action.
Yeah, sort of the days are numbered where you can sort of hop from provider to provider and try to get your messages through. You're going to have to register it. You're going to have to identify yourself. You have to know your customer, and now's the time. And who wants to pay a penny a text, Scott? That's cost prohibitive.
It's crazy.
It's crazy. It is.
Right. That alone, I think, is going to really push out a lot of people. And then well, all right, well, then maybe we'll go look at toll free and we'll look at short code as options. And they are. It depends on your use case, but there's definitely other channels that you might be able to run your traffic on. But there's the same processes and the same vetting. Vetting is on those channels as well as the 10 DLC.
Yeah, exactly. Scott, I wanted to go back because I really enjoyed the quote from Terrence, who's an attorney from Alston and Bird LLC. He told the story about how he was at the pool party on the first day of LeadsCon, and he turned to one person who was absolutely doing compliance, turned around, and somebody who was doing no compliance whatsoever. Mm-hmm. And I guess what I wanted to ask you is are the days now numbered where you can buy a list and just start sending out content? Now it's first party opt-in is now king, right?
Yeah, I think unfortunately we're kind of heading in that direction, and as you referenced, the individual who said that basically I'm not going to play by the rules, I'll do what I want because I make a lot of money.
Right.
To be honest, they're the reason we're here. They're the reason we have StirShake, and they're the reason we have the campaign registry. Yeah. And so I think especially when it relates to messaging, you always have to really make sure that you understand the carrier's code of conduct or the carrier's acceptable use, right? It's their networks, they do control them. And so a lot of times TCPA and CTIA may not directly align with what the carriers are mandating, but at the end of the day, that they get to pick and choose who they allow the traffic from on their network. So their perception, their expectation is that you're only running traffic from direct opt-in. They don't like the third-party lead sharing. They, for lack of a better word, it's forbidden according to the carriers, right? You can't share opt-in across multiple brands.
Yep. And we've seen, by the way, going back to the FCC for a few seconds, they haven't been quiet about going after some of the biggest players in the industry. We saw the notice go out to Twilio for the ways that they're running their traffic, and everybody's on notice across the industry. Mm-hmm. Now's the time, and I'm glad we're having this time together today for this briefing. And it was great connecting with customers at the show who, again, the majority are doing the right things. There's just a small percentage that continue to make these things necessary.
Yeah, and I think the point there, right, is to do everything you can. A lot of people that were in particular at LeadsCon, a lot of people who run performance marketing platforms, they allow end users or other companies to plug into their platform to generate and send message traffic through them. right? And I think that actually where a lot of the problems come from is it's not like for us, it's speaking on behalf of Commio, it's not our direct customer, it's our customer's customer.
Right.
And so, we covered a little bit on deep vetting, but I mean, you really have to go through, additional measures to make sure that your customers are vetting their customers to the extent of, use the FCC's Know Your Customer, guide as a starting point, but really get to know them, make sure that this traffic is safe, and make sure that you're auditing that traffic on a regular basis to make sure that, you're not going to get in trouble for what your customer is doing.
Right.
And I think the other thing too is, set an extremely low tolerance for troublemakers. I think at this point, right, it's like there's people, I've gotten RCAs. I mean, this is the third RCA in the last 2 months, or we've gotten, half a dozen tracebacks in the last week. And so everybody's like, we just kind of, go with the flow until we can't. But for people who really want to play by the rules and want to be successful moving forward, in addition to knowing your customer, set low tolerance for people who are abusing the process, people who want to send garbage out there, people who are saying, hey, this is my use case that I got approved, but then I turn around and send something completely different, right?
Right.
Because they're going to get you in trouble. And if you, to the extent that you could be blacklisted, right? I mean, if you get blacklisted, you can't send anything.
Yeah.
So then that pretty much really, could put you in a bad situation.
Yeah. By the way, so obviously, Scott, we're recording this session, and I put links throughout the video that we saw earlier to get our compliance checklist. We'll definitely include a link to that in the webinar video follow up to this session. Definitely grab that, give it to the folks who are writing your content, who are registering your campaigns. It's literally check off these 10, 12 things, and there's a good chance you're going to be fine. There's always a small percentage chance they're going to question something, but I think the biggest takeaway from all the stuff that you and I have created together over the last, year plus is don't think of registering as the first step in the process. It should almost be the last step. You need to start with, what's your use case, get your tax ID stuff together, make sure that, your tax ID has the same address, on that filing as your corporate address, make sure your privacy policy is solid on your website where you're sending that traffic, make sure it mentions that you're not, selling, third party data, all those things that we talk about, all the way down to, all right, I have brands, going to register those. I have campaigns, and make sure that the text messages that we're putting in there are the actual texts with the actual links that you will be sending. So it's sort of like everybody was flipping it around and just saying, oh, registration is the first thing we'll do. It's just sort of a step. No, it should be the last step. I don't know why I always feel like, Scott, I think about it like I've said this before, maybe this isn't a great way to say it. It's like publishing a newspaper. Like you wouldn't just send out a first draft of a newspaper and throw it on people's lawns. Remember, that's a blog that people print out and throw on people's lawns.
That's a great analogy,
for you younger people. But in all seriousness, like you got to dot your I's, cross your T's, make sure the messages are exactly what you're going to be sending in that registration. And then, we won't have those requests coming back from the carriers that will slow down or stop our transmissions. It won't happen.
Yeah. Just also, just understand that, the process is changing, and this also includes Twilio, it includes Cinch. A lot of the big players, when you submit campaigns, they are now manually vetted. A human being is going to look at your campaign. They're going to look at your content. They're going to look at your URLs. They're going to go to your website, your landing pages, your properties, and make sure that, the privacy policy aligns to the perceived center of that brand, right? So you have to understand that now there's vetting that's going on. And we still see a large amount of campaigns being rejected because of data mismatches, because they registered under brand A, but all the content points to brand B. And so again, we have a lot of stuff that talks about this, and we can definitely help customers understand the processes, but it's not going to get easier. It's going to get a little bit tighter, I think, honestly, as we get closer to these deadlines that we have in front of us. So,
right. I think it's going to make.
No, go ahead.
No.
The other thing I heard is an also valuable takeaway, right? And I think Alan mentioned it as well, is, if you're a small organization or if you're a large organization, have a compliance person, whether it's a compliance officer, whether you're outsourcing it to a company that specializes in compliance. If you're smaller, appoint someone on your staff who can really become an expert on all of this, everything from the TCPA, CTIA, the carrier's code of conducts, the campaign registry, and have someone who can basically teach everybody else on the staff who's going to be responsible for sending this content, to make sure that everybody is very, very well versed. I think that's is very important. I don't think a lot of people have compliance, experts on their staff, and they should definitely focus on getting that in place.
Yeah, it's it seems like it's only getting a little bit more complicated than less complicated. But that's why you need somebody like Commio that can help. But we'd love to open it up here, by the way, to your questions, guys. We have a Q&A button there at the bottom of the screen in Zoom. You can put in your questions, and I'll feed them over to Scott, and we'll take those. So I'm sure people have questions, because you and I both, reviewing the FCC announcement and the DCA announcement, had lots of questions.
Right.
So I think one of them too, Scott, people I think get a little confused about this. They say, hey, you mentioned earlier that Commio has a way to register brands and campaigns through your platform, but you can also do it direct with the campaign registry. Is there a plus or a minus to doing it either way, Scott, or which one would you recommend?
Yeah, if you are direct with the campaign registry, you can create brands and register brands direct with them. But the one component that's critical component that you miss is the ability to assign phone numbers to those campaigns. You cannot do that within the registry. So you would have to pivot over to Commio and then go look up your campaigns and then assign them that way. Our portal, our APIs are basically, they replicate the campaign registry APIs. In the processes, so it's pretty transparent. It's up to you if you want to go through a couple steps and do it on the registry first and then come over to Commio to do the number assignments. But I think it's preference at that point.
Okay. Jay had a really good question, and I think I know, but I'll feed it to you here. It's like, so most of sounds like what you guys are talking about is more canned campaigns and messaging. So what about something like a technician who needs to message a customer when they get to a site and they have a general conversation back and forth, and potentially that might happen through a platform, for instance? So how does that sort of correspond with the need to register?
It's a great question. That would probably fall under the mixed use case. So, that's a low volume. I think it's low volume mixed. So the carrier's perception is they still want to know who you are, what brand that technician is representing, and what type of dialogue they're having with that customer. So, I guess by the carrier's perception, especially if the texts are originating through an automated type system or automated type platform, then they would probably recommend, or they probably want that to be registered. If the messages are being originated P2P, technically, then registration is not required.
Yeah, exactly. If it's person to person, you're good. Yeah. John had a good question, and I think, it's interesting. We go back to the basics here. He's saying, hey, so for direct campaign registry, where would we do that? And the answer is campaignregistry.com, right? That's the TCR's main website. You can go through that to register. Yep. There you go. Easy one. I like that one. Let's see. Does a soft phone, that Jay's asking, does a soft phone fall under P2P still? Do you know, Scott?
You know what? That's a great question. I would say that's pretty much gray area. A lot of people basically have they use basically iOS or Android apps, smartphone apps, and so they actually initiate the message from the SIM card, right? And then those messages get aggregated into an actual messaging platform, and then they connect to the carriers like Commio, and they go out to the the mobile carriers, etc. So I would suspect that if you're using a soft phone, it's not a SIM card, so that would be A2P.
Got it. Interesting. David had an interesting question. He said that our primary hosted platform allows users and their customers to move a call queue hold over to a texting or an SMS chain. Would that also be mixed use?
Like omni-channel. It's like a contact center says, hey, would you like to have our agent text you or continue the conversation?
Right.
That would probably fall under mixed use, and just a best practice there, right? Is even though they gave you a verbal, send them a text message for the double opt-in.
Right.
Hey, you agreed to receive text messages. To continue, press yes. Now you have the actual written consent from that subscriber, and then continue with the conversation that way. So
Yeah, I was gonna say, David, that's a great question because I actually did that when who was I talking to? I think it was Liberty Mutual, my car insurance.
Mhm.
I forget. I was asking them a question, and I was doing it through my web browser, and for some I needed to go, so I transferred it to my phone. And the first thing that came to my phone when I hit the button to transfer it was, "Hey, are we okay to do this conversation over texting?" And I said yes, and then we just picked up where we left off. So
Mhm.
getting that opt-in as the first step is key. Yeah, for sure.
Yep.
Um, let's see. We've got somebody asking, does each brand need to be approved first for the brands before the brand's campaigns are created? I think the answer is yes, right? You need
Yes.
brands first, campaigns second.
Yep.
Yeah. And the thing you want to avoid, right, Scott, is like, if you're the one doing the campaigns, for instance, for a brand, like remember, you're never going to register yourself. You're registering the brand directly and then their campaigns underneath, right?
Yeah, I mean, so if you're a reseller, you're an aggregator, you definitely don't want to register all your customers under your brand because they will be limited to
Right.
your brand scoring and throughput. So,
Yes.
and really, again, remember, the campaign registry is a trace back chain of custody platform, almost like Stir Shaken, right? The carriers want visibility who's the perceived sender of that text message, and those are all the steps in that process. So.
Right. Right. Okay, looks like if anybody else has any other questions, feel free to put them in there. But I did want to say that here obviously we're getting long in time, but I think it was worth the time together today as we came out of the show with these changes coming. That obviously very open here at Commio. We're not here necessarily to sell you anything, but we are here to be a resource for you as you try to sort of work your way through all these changes in 10-digit long code, short code, toll free. So, we've got experts standing by that can, take a look at your use case, give you advice, make sure you're doing the right things. And we would love the opportunity, especially for sending high volumes, to, take a look, and we might be a really good fit for your platform, your solution, and be able to help you send those messages, as many as possible through those upstream carriers. And we can really help. Scott and his team, are here to help, and all of our cloud experts. So with that in mind, you really would love it if you head over to commio.com, click on that get a demo button. And again, we could spend 10, 15 minutes together just to evaluate your use case, give you advice, allow you to ask questions directly to our experts. We're here to help. And who knows, we could start working together. So with that, I want to say, Jason's asking here, good question. What's the target date for having this done? I think what he's talking about is, I think that is a big takeaway, right, Scott, is that, there aren't necessarily a lot of hard and fast dates coming out of this, except for the fact that we need to make sure that 50% of our traffic coming through 10DLC is registered within the next couple of weeks. That's on us working with our customers.
Yep.
The rest of this is sort of open-ended, and it's starting to close in where there will be a date. We don't really have a date yet.
I've heard other carriers, right? So other DCAs, other messaging platforms, I guess you call them, the connectivity, network partners. I've already said, I think it was a March 31st deadline. So there's a lot of people out there in the space that already have set a tighter deadline for this. I think ours is April 14th. And so we're a little bit more extended out of that than some of the other providers out there. And so that gives us a little bit of time to get this done, but the reality is that if all of the carriers decide, and maybe it's because of the FCC pushing them in that direction, that, okay, April 30th, that's it. Everything has to be verified or it will be blocked. We're not going to get, a 6-month notice. Now, again, as I mentioned before, right? I mean, over the last year and a half, like we got these dates and the dates constantly get pushed, but I really believe that we could see something from the carriers within the next month and a half that really is going to have a hard deadline.
Yep. So if you don't have a compliance team, now's the time. If you need some assistance in the short term, Commio's here to help. Make sure everything's aligned properly. Now's the time to make sure you're registering your brands and your campaigns, and that you're all aligned, so you're not caught by surprise. The last thing we want is any of this to disrupt your business. So, actually, yeah, Jay asked, a really good question too. Is like, can your company be held liable, or is this all on the end user or company? You mentioned something interesting during your section earlier, Scott, when we were at the show about liability insurance. We're almost at that point where this is becoming, a legal threat to not only a provider like Commio, but to the end user, if they're held liable for some of this. It's just
absolutely.
Right.
And anybody,
Yeah.
you can research it. And I guess the way it works, right, is that if you get, God forbid, a TCPA lawsuit, right, whoever's initiating that lawsuit is probably going to subpoena and add everybody in between.
Yes.
In that litigation, right? So it's really important. Again, that's why the key is don't let someone who's going to put you at risk onto your network.
Right.
If you do have customers and you vetted them, do they have the insurance? Do they have the resources available to defend you? Right. If they did something bad, right. I mean, then that's on that panel. These lawsuits can cost $150,000 to $300,000 to defend against, right. To litigate. So, your best case is not to get there in the first place, but to make sure that if you ever, God forbid, are in that situation, that you have the resources available to you. Exactly. Man, we've come a long way, Scott, the last 3-4 years from where we started to where we are now. Things are, the guardrails are in place, the penalties are in place, the fees are in place, and things are, getting more complicated. So now is as good as time as any to clean up, your customer, make sure that you're not letting bad actors on as sub accounts to your system, and that you're following the rules. So it's really time to sit up and pay attention. So with that, everybody, thank you so much for hanging in. What a great group hung in with us the entire way. And like I mentioned earlier, we did record the session. We'll be sending it out here first thing tomorrow morning with some additional resources. And again, if you have any questions, reply to that email or, go over to commio.com, click get a demo, and let's have a discussion. So Scott, thanks for your time today. That was great. And thanks everybody. Yeah. Thank you much, everybody. We'll talk to you soon and have a great rest of your day. Thank you.